So I wrote a book about heroism and published it a few months back, and some people think I'm crazy. Or really, they just misunderstand. The thing is we live in perhaps the most anti-heroic culture ever. We have lost the masculine heroic myth. We have no respect or veneration for the classical virtues like courage, like manliness, like heroism. And these virtues were held as sacred to almost every tribe and nation of the old world, of the classical antiquity. You know, whether it's Native Americans, Indo-Europeans, ancient Greece, across Asia, the masculine hero was sacred. Why? I believe heroism to be the prerequisite, the foundation for all true transformation. And in order for a boy to become a man, he must go through a radical transformation where he must learn what is true and what's not him. And he must slay resistance. He must slay fear. He must slay, the adversity he faces and overcome himself into a new version. And that is the most heroic thing you could possibly do. Yet we don't understand this at all anymore. When I was nearing the end of my writing process, which was so agonizing and heroic in and of itself, I was talking to a woman at a coffee shop and she asked me, "What's your book about?" And I was like, "Oh, this is a dreaded question." It's about the warrior's way. It's about the heroic journey of man. And she looks at me and kind of smiles and says, "Oh, like being strong." And I was very internally bothered at that. But I just smiled and kind of walked away. And I've gotten that quite a few times. And it just reveals to me that we live in a culture that glorifies continuity, that glorifies peace and comfort and tolerance and kindness. We no longer live in a culture that glorifies honor and courage and the things that are actually required for true men to rise. You see, when I said heroism, she thinks of only being strong because she misses this metaphysical element of the heroism to combat addictions, to combat and overcome past versions of yourself. The heroism required to shed your skin is tremendous. It's terrifying to let go and overcome. So I want to talk about that journey a little bit because I realize that some people aren't familiar with it. And for all the high thumos, high-spirited men out there, heroism is the number one quality we need to cultivate if we want to rise into glory. So how I'm looking at life these days is here's me as my current self. I'm doing pretty good. I love KB. I love me. But also I'm aware that I'm lazy. I procrastinate. I let feelings and weaknesses and past patterns block me from what I could be. So here's me right now, and here's my potential, okay? Here's the potential in my soul. And as Abraham Maslow once said, what a man can be, he must be. If you too feel this potential inside of you and want to bring it forth, it is literally about living into a new image of who you could be. Like for me, someone who works on his business, on his creative projects for 8 hours a day, who meditates well, who's all in with his vitality, with his training, with his love, with his relationships, who lives, into his destiny fully. That's the image that we're all kind of seeking right there. But to get there, what do we have to face? We have to face resistance. Resistance is the force that lies between our current self and our higher self. For instance, making videos like this and writing every day. I never want to do it. I talk myself out of it like 10% of the time, but I've learned to overcome that resistance, to slay that dragon. And that's the title of my book, is The Psychology of Slaying Dragons, or The Psychology of Taming Dragons, however you want to look at it. But we have these dragons in our soul. Your dragon might be different than mine. I have many dragons. I have dragons of grandiosity. I often get blind and lazy. I have dragons of resistance. All of these things that keep me in my current comfort zone. All these fears that blockade my current comfort zone and block me from becoming the man I could be. And this is why that warrior ethos, the heroic path, is so important, and people don't understand it. And people won't understand it unless they feel the potential, they see a higher destiny, they see a higher vision, and are aware of the foes they face. You don't need to be a hero if you don't have an enemy. And most people, like, there's this quote in the song is, my greatest enemy is me, right? And even he can't hold me back. And like, that's that heroic mindset right there. But the thing is what I'm realizing, for instance, is like people who, let's say they do a lot of drugs, they smoke, they vape, they party multiple times a week, they're, taking Adderall, or they're taking antidepressants. And a lot of them aren't even like aware that they're, entertaining dragons, that they're like just they're walking through life on crutches. A lot of people kind of, affirm people in their weakness. Like, we go to therapists, and therapists are trained to just validate our darkness. Oh, here's all the ways I let myself loop in fear, and how I'm addicted to pornography, and like how my life is a mess. And they're like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, we tolerate evil inside of people instead of encourage them to overcome it. We have lost this heroic masculine manliness of self-overcoming, of courage, of slaying the dragon, right? And because of this, people just embrace the dragon as themselves. Like, it's a very strange thing. People are so complacent right now. And I think we also live in a weaponized time, meaning that temptations have literally been weaponized by things like TikTok, by things like Zins and vapes, and pornography. And like, we have this access to infinite dopamine hits, and social media and Netflix and movies. Like, the list just goes on and on and on. Temptation has become weaponized. And also, we have been sedated by a cultural myth of that you are okay and great just as you are. Now, there is some truth in that. There is truth in being content with this moment. And that's, maybe more Taoist, maybe more Eastern. But there's also truth in the masculine heroic myth of high thumos, of living into your glory, of living into your most glorious self. And there needs to be balance between these two. And I think each person is incarnated with a certain balance within their archetype of East and West, of the heroic and the maybe more path of the water. But nonetheless, in our culture in general, we don't have a masculine heroic myth anymore. We don't have, like, in ancient Greece, you would have been told stories of the Iliad, of Achilles, of Heracles every night. You would have venerated them as your ancestor. You would have sought to be excellent in every domain of existence, to be excellent in debate, to be excellent in philosophy, to be excellent in combat, to be excellent in love, like to be excellent human being. That would have been your ideal that you venerated since you were about 2, right? Think about what that would create within a man. Hence, why do you think ancient Greece produced more great men as a sole culture of like a couple 100,000 people than any culture since? It was that masculine heroic myth. And I think that masculine heroic myth is important for the production of high culture, the production of great men, but it's also just important for the production of free men, of true men, who have overcome their weaker nature, who have overcome their lower self, who have slayed the dragon per se and are living into their excellences, like whatever that may look like for them. So this is what people don't understand about heroism is the most important thing. When you break your heart, when you lose people you love, when you have to let go of something that hurts so bad, you need to be heroic, right? When you have to face death and face the void, like an initiation on a big psychedelic trip, or when you're fasting and praying to God, it takes heroism. And it also takes heroism to overcome resistance, to go to the gym every day, to let go of porn, to let go of the addictions, and live into your most glorious life. Both letting go and self-overcoming are the essence of heroism and the essence of what I spent 2 years writing about. So I hope I could condense it into this video for you. I'm Christian. Thanks for watching. There's a link in the description if you want to find a community of men who are into philosophy discussions, but also accountability and growing together. If you can find your men's group, there's a link below for that. Thanks for being here. You can watch another video here. Peace out, my friends. And don't forget, to live dangerously today.